guess I hope that I would be a voice for an underrepresented experience. That when people think of me, they think of brave Grace. Someone who's willing to sort of go to that place that is forsaken or forgotten. I want to be the person that says, like, that's important, and God sees that, and I see it.
Church has fallen into this consumer corporate model of putting on a show. Part of me doesn't want to go to church to be entertained. I want it to cost me something. I actually want it to cost me something. And I think we've fallen into this trap of sitting there and being entertained and receiving. You get your fix and then you go, and somehow that's insufficient to me.
When you present that the only reason someone could leave the church is because they were upset or discouraged, or someone was mean to them, or whatever it is, then you've completely talked past the person who left for intellectual reasons. Yeah, people like me, you're going to continue to lose us if there's no answers there.
This 2-week, 2-part series that we're starting today, it hits pretty close to home. I know growing up in a Christian household, you would think that, you're just going to celebrate and be excited about God and faith and whatever. And if you've been coming around Forefront for any period of time, you've probably heard a bit of my story that, honestly, I just went because there were cute girls in youth group and I could get away from my parents on weekend trips. And so going to church and being a part of that was just a destination and a means to an end of just serving myself. And I spent a lot of time, and I've heard many of your stories where it was just kind of running away from God. And some of the stories are even like, I don't know that I'm really running away from God as much as I'm going, God, I'm not quite sure if I want to engage that and be a part of that. And as we lead up to Easter, over the next 2 weeks, we're going to look at this. It's all based on this book by David Kinnaman called You Lost Me. And the research that was done was from 18 years of age to about 29 years of age, which now the statistics have caught up, and it actually ranges from about 18 to 40. This group that they would call the Mosaics that are slowly saying, I am okay with God, just not so much His church. People kind of walking away going like, I this whole God, creator, divine, spirituality, that's fine. But when it comes to meeting up with all those people, forget it. And there's things that they began to walk through. And David Kinnaman, as he wrote this book and has done some of his research, his story was a lot like mine and maybe some of yours, where he walked away from the church and faith and then began going like, maybe there's something to this. And so he sat down with a research group called the Barna Group that does fantastic in-depth study. And so they went all over the country, just scouring this demographic, asking them, thousands and thousands and thousands of people, why? Why is it that you don't want to engage faith anymore? Why is it that you kind of go, all right, I think God's okay, I'll pray to Him when I eat my Taco Bell, but I'm not sure that I want to gather together and stand, sit, and all the things that they do. I'm not sure that I'm ready for that. Why? There were some interesting reasons. One of those was we think that the church has nothing good to say for the LGBTQ community, and so forget it. Because they would just say, you know what, you're going to hell, and that's the end of it. And as they asked these people, this was their response. The next thing that would be up on the list is they say, you know what, that they're just a bunch of hypocrites. When those people gather together and they sing, and oh, Jesus is so great, and then they get in their cars and they yell with their spouse, and then they drive off, they yell at their kids, and they're mad at their job, and blah, 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 and the list goes on. So why would I want to do that? I already have a lot of that anyways. I don't need to go to church to waste a morning to have all that same stuff. Why would I want to fill a room with those people and be a part of that? The third one, which is one of the biggest ones, said they're just super judgmental. That every time somebody says something, that there's just a finger pointing, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? Why are you like this? And I feel like I'm already drowning in my life as they interviewed these people. drowning in my life and feeling shame and regret. Why do I need the church to pile it on any further? And so there's been this trend where people, more than ever, are very open to God and faith and spiritual conversations. But when it comes to the church, it's kind of like, nah, see you later. Well, as a matter of fact, I've been there, tried that, but you lost me. And it's fascinating to me what takes place. And I would say that Forefront Church, not to brag on us, but is a little bit different than the norm. We try to base ministry and do things so that we can have open, honest conversations, that we could talk about God's love and about God's grace. But ultimately, all of these things begin to move to a pinnacle spot where we celebrate and look at what does it mean to follow and be more like God's Son, Jesus. That we're not going to get lost in the mix of all these other things. And so over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be looking at that. And if you have a Bible, we're going to open up to this story in the book of Matthew in the New Testament. And so if you're not familiar with your Bible, and you're kind of like, I have this, but I haven't opened it up in a while, that's fine. It's you can flip to the table of contents. The Bible's broken up into Old Testament and New Testament. We're going to be in the New Testament. Find Matthew, flip over to chapter 13. You can also get a free Bible at our Get Connected table in the lobby. They're absolutely free. There's no catch. You don't have to fill out a card so we can mail you something. No, just pick up a Bible for free. You can go to your app store, search Bible app and download one of those. And if you want to take notes today too, you can go to your app store in the Android or iOS store and search Forefront Church, and you'll find the little upside down globe, because we're all about turning the world upside down with God's love and grace. And so you can take notes in there today too, and that would be super terrific. And so if you're OCD, we're going to be starting in chapter 13, verse 1. And so you're like, what verse? You better tell me what verse or I'm going to go crazy. So verse 1, take a breath. You're doing good. I'm there with you. All right. But before we jump into this, I want to give you a little bit of background, because in the opening part of this verse that we're going to look at in a second, it says the same day. And it begins to tell a bit of the story. And we're catching up with Jesus. And so what we kind of go is and at least for me, I read that and I go, well, what happened the rest of the day? I kind of want to know what's leading up to what's happening so I can have a better understanding. It would be like jumping in the middle of the movie and going what's going on? And maybe you're that person, you just keep asking questions, what's going on? What's happening? Just watch the movie. And so if you're moving in and doing this, we want to kind of jump back and see what's happening in the beginning. And so earlier in the day, we catch up with Jesus, and he's going around with his disciples. These were the guys that he was teaching and sharing life with. These were really good friends. They were following him through all this. They're going and they're teaching, they're healing people. And there was this group of guys called the Pharisees. They were the religious leaders of the day. Even though their name even has the sound of fair in it, they were far from fair. They were very mean. They would be what many people, when they say the church lost me, they'd look and go, well, the people and their leaders, they're hypocrites. And that's what these guys were. They were the religious leaders that preached really great stuff but didn't live any of it in their day-to-day lives. And actually were very judgmental, very angry, very just bitter. And they didn't like what Jesus had to say. They're like, we need to get rid of this guy. We need to figure out a way, kind of corner him, catch him in something that by the law standards, we can kill him. And so Jesus has been healing, teaching, doing all these things. And then in the midst of all of that, they're trying to kill him. And so he's like, this isn't good. I'm going to go find a place to hide. And so he finds this home, and he's just hanging out in there, and he's taking a breather. And finally he pokes his head out, and he's like, there's nobody around. There's no crowds. There's no guys with pitchforks and torches. Let's go. And so it's later on in the day. I imagine that would be a little exhausting, people running after you trying to kill you. I don't know about you. I've never had that. Never been in that situation. Lived in the good old city of Virginia Beach, and so I'm feeling good to go. But he is just overwhelming everything that's going on. So we catch up with him in Matthew 13, starting in verse 1. If you don't have a Bible, it'll be here on the screens. The same day, so all this has taken place. Jesus is a little stressed out. The same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. He's trying like you and me, just take a breather. Everybody acting crazy. If you go to your house, the kids are acting nuts, everything's going, you're like, I need to go outside before I end someone. And so you do, and he's had a hard day. It's been rough. He's gone outside, sit by the lake. Verse 2, such large crowds gathered around him that he got in the boat and sat in it while the people stood on the shore. Jesus can't catch a break, man. Everywhere he goes, people want to hear from him. They want to see what he's doing. There is something about the nature of Jesus that's unlike anybody else of that time. We would be able to, as we read and see, to look back and go, well, that's because he's the Son of God. But back then, they were just kind of hearing these rumors and things, but there was something about him that was absolutely miraculous. People ask that about forfeit. They're like, crowds happen, and like people come together, and people keep coming, like you guys, and then you guys like to procreate because there's 1 billion children back there in children's ministry, and we're like, what is going on? There's so many people ask, like, what? And I'm like, it's not about me. It's not about Dan or Chris or whoever. It's about what God's doing. God's doing this great thing, and people continue to come and say, I just have to keep coming back because this is refreshing to hear about God in a new way. And so people were gravitated towards Jesus because it wasn't about rules and regulations and all these things. Something was different. So what does he do? He could have just said, guys, I'm real tired. Y'all just need deuces. Like, I'm going back in the house. No, what does he do? Verse 3, he then told them many things in parables. Parables are just a spiritual story or earthly story with a spiritual meaning. And so he's saying, all right, I'm going to tell you something that you would be able to understand. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. And so for you and I, we live close enough to Pungo, or you might have a green thumb and you're uber organic. You're like, I'm going to plant and eat all my own vegetables because I despise the grocery store or whatever. And so we would know a little bit. I don't plant stuff because it would all die. And so, but I do see enough of this. I go, oh, I've been to the strawberry festival once. I know what planting stuff is. And so then he told him that a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering seeds, some fell on the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil, and it sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up and the plants were scorched, they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants out. Still other seed fell on good soil. And this is where we're going to kind of land today when it comes to this idea, this concept of the church losing people, which we don't see a lot of, and I thank God for that. We just see more. But what does it mean to continue to cultivate that in your personal life so that it will echo into other people's lives as well? Fell on good soil where it produced a crop 100, 60, even 30 times what was sown. And he always wraps up with this, whoever has ears, let them hear. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with somebody and they're listening to you and they're nodding, and then you could just tell them a story about what's happening at home. And then you'd be like, yeah, and then my kids, and then a dinosaur happened, and laser beams came out of their eyes, and they're like, They're not listening to you. They hear you, but they're not listening. You say, you've all sat and you've heard this, but are you really listening to what's taking place? And what I want to do over our short time this morning together is to be able to look at being at a place where we could say, God, not only do I want to follow you, I'm beginning to understand this, believe it. No matter where we are, I know every time we gather, there's people who are like, I'm still just asking questions, or I'm following God and I'm tracking with him. No matter where we are, they'd say, God, I want to take a step towards you and I want to share this with other people. But before we jump into that, I want to pray for you, and I want you to pray with me. God, I thank you that we get to be a part of this, and that this whole existence that we're leading just gives us an opportunity to share your love and your grace. But there are plenty of people. Some of us in this room have been there before. Some of us are there right now. We're just like, I'm not quite sure about your church. And so as we dive into this, will you just teach us and lead us and guide us to where you want us to be? It's through your Son. We pray all these things. Amen. I'm going to go ahead and say it, that my name is Jason, and I stink at basketball, all right? Awful. Like, if you want to play a pickup game, don't pick me, all right? I'm terrible when it comes to, if it's a surfboard, gotcha. Skateboard, gotcha. Soccer, gotcha. If it's my feet, good to go. When it comes to actually engaging my hands and arms to move, baseball, awful at it. Basketball, to be able to shoot in depth perception and hit the hoop, done, awful. You don't want to pick me at all. But sometimes, even as a kid, we would play basketball on occasion. And we would just have fun. And so a bunch of friends of mine, we were skateboarding one day, and that got old after a while, and it was super hot. And so we're like, oh, we'll just kind of toy around on the basketball court. And so we're running around doing our thing. And one of our friends in particular was huge. He was bigger than all the rest of us. His name was Russell. And if you had the opportunity to be one of the people that were team captains and you start doing the picking, you're like, I'm picking Russell. Why? Because we're going to win this thing. Because he was pretty good. You know, he could dribble and kind of do his thing. I couldn't. Like, I was no John Stockton, no Steve Nash. Like, none of that. Had no capacity to play the game at all. I could kind of dribble and then everyone would steal it. But I knew if I picked Russell that we were going to win. We're going to win. We're going to Tom Hanks, Field League of Their Own. We're going to win. And he hits that kid in the face with the glove. I love that part. It's so good. It's so, got him. Anyway, so sometimes the hamster falls asleep at the wheel. And so got Russell, and we're winning and doing our thing, and I get a rebound, all right? I get the rebound, and I see him booking. And so I do know this. If I can get it to him at the other side of the court, he's going to destroy it, all right? Now, he couldn't dunk, but he could jump up enough to, like, put it in and touch the rim, and everybody's like, oh! So I was like, if we get it to him, this is going to be awesome. So I throw it to him, and he's running, and he catches it. Now, the goal is to get it in the basket, get it in the goal, right? What you shouldn't do is say this is the hoop. As you're grabbing it and run and you're about to go up, you shouldn't then turn around and be like, ha, 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 and look at the other guy, because you're going to hit your big fat face on the pole, which is exactly what Russell did. He grabs it and he tries to talk trash, which he could because he was good, until he ran in to the pole. So he grabs it, he's like, boom. The next day, he had a bruise the shape of the pole, and I don't know like how his neck had to like do, even on his neck and like down, it looked so ridiculous. And when he fell down, the only thing we knew to do, because we didn't have cell phones to YouTube it and everything, it was a long ago. We just had beepers, and everybody thought we were drug dealers because we had beepers. Y'all remember those days. And some of you do. Somebody's like, what's a beeper? We also had cassette tapes. So, and so I reached down. The only thing I know to do, and this is going to kind of be as we're sowing the seed, we're going to keep referencing this hand that we will give out to somebody. Kind of reach my hand down and help him up. And he's like, man, I misjudged that pole. And I was like, yeah, you did. At least you have all your teeth right now. But what happened is he did that. He said misjudge it, but what happened is he lost focus. The focus was to get it in the goal, but all he could focus on was talking trash, and he ended up paying the price for it, for getting his eye off the prize and missing, well, he didn't really miss the goal. He got it, but not the way he intended to. And I think far too often, the church gets dislodged and misses the mission of what it means to follow God and leaves Jesus behind. And when in the process, when people walk through, when the guy in the video says, I don't want to be entertained, I want it to cost me something. That for far too long, what the church has done is if we can just get people in the door, if we can make them smile and feel happy, if we could make them laugh for a second, then that'll be what it's about. And God's like, no, I'm so much more than that. What happens is people are catching on to that, and they're saying, the church just wants to entertain me. I need something that'll impact my marriage. I need something that'll get these kids in line because I don't know what else to do, or one of them's going to meet Jesus because I can't take it anymore. I don't know what to do at my job because my boss, it just the demands and everything is driving me crazy, and I need something that matters. And so people are asking for something that has more substance than just going, doing a song and dance, let's everybody love Jesus, and we go, and we lead the same lives that we've always been living. God calls us to more, and we miss the mark in that. And some churches do it. I'm going to real quick and kind of jump through some of these because I wrote some down. Some churches focus on like hot button issues, and they'll say like, all right, we're gonna focus on the book of Revelation and like end of time stuff. We're going to talk about like people that God's coming back, Jesus is coming back. We're going to do this, and you're going to burn in hell. And I'm like, whoa, time out. And we need to talk about Left Behind and this movie and that movie. And I'm like, no. And we have people that'll walk through the doors. And they'll say, hey, what do you guys think about abortion? We need to go that. We need to go pick it. We need to do that. And I'm like, we're going to talk about Jesus. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. If you don't do that, I'm going to leave. I'm like, well, here's a list of churches. And here you go. And people get, and I am unapologetic about it. And people go like, man, I'm really offended that you wouldn't like jump on my issue that I have. And say, we're not about jumping on a list of issues. We're on talking about what it means to follow and love Jesus and be more like him and love one another and care for one another and be in each other's lives. And so a lot of people will jump on issues, and as a church, as we celebrate, because today is our 17-year anniversary, which is pretty rad. And we'll talk about it briefly here in a moment, but we're not going to talk a lot about it because we don't want the focus to be on the name Forefront Church. We want the focus to be on God. And so like later there'll be cupcakes out there that you can grab when you're out. And I saw some of the kids were like, yeah, cupcakes. Which if you have kids, I don't even need to finish that statement, but there'll be cupcakes out there. Handle your business and take care of your kids. So don't the kids grab like 18 cupcakes and do whatever. You'll pay for it later if you don't want your kids because they'll be just freaking out. And I love what's happening here at Forefront Church, but we don't want to get off mission. We don't want to get off on something that what the church shouldn't be about. And we could, getting into all this political stuff and all this stuff, well, like there's, like each one of our staff probably has a different, stance politically. We don't have like, if you're on staff, you have to be this party or anything. Like there's all kinds of things we could get into issues with. We say, we're not going to stop on hot button issues. We're going to focus on Jesus because that's what matters. He's who matters. There's some things that people do, that churches will get hung up on pleasing everybody in the church. And I'd be like, that ain't going to happen. Because there's plenty of, like, if we polled today and we're like, what color, if we said, we're going to build a new thing, which it's going through the city and we're going to, like, we're going to vote on the carpet color. We'd have 1,000 different answers. And we do all these different things. And we have people come in, they're like, hey, I don't really like the way that you guys, like, play, like, an opening song that's not like a Jesus song. And we're like, well, it connects back to our theme, and here's why. They sing all the lonely people. We're talking about being lonely and being far from God. Like, I don't like that. And then I'll pull out here's a list of churches for you. And that's not to be mean, and that's not to patronize them. I know that we're not for everybody. There's going to be some people who walk through the door that say, like, I don't really feel like I fit in. And they're like, but you say everybody's welcome. I'm like, everybody is welcome. And they're like, but you say nobody's perfect. I'm like, nobody is perfect. They say anything's possible. I'm like, yeah, anything is possible. Then if anything's possible, why don't you change and be this? And I just say, no, because this is our mission. And I point to the thing as you walk by. People helping people find and follow Jesus. If anything's going to derail us from that, we're not going to do it. And they're like, I don't understand. I'm like, well, there's a reason that every time we open the doors and every time we have small groups, whenever more and more people come and it gets more and more full, and it's not just full for full's sake, it's people going, I want to know about Jesus, I want to learn about Jesus, I want God to impact my life so I can impact others. And so I said, as long as God keeps doing this, we're going to give you that list again, and we love you, and we're going to pray for you, and we'll help you get connected, but we're not going to change who we're about because we are about Jesus. And so when people say you lost me, my prayer is that no one will ever be able to say that about Forefront Church. They'll say, you know what, this church has impacted my life so deeply with God's love. And there's some stories of people that, as a church, we want to extend a hand and say, how can we help you? What can we do? You are loved. Wrap our arms around people. And there's some stories that you guys have shared over the last week. You said send them in, text via email. I love Forefront because some of them are pretty funny. Some of them just wreck me. And why don't you check out a few of those right here?
Grateful ones who've been forgiven.
I love Forefront because of the Millers, my family, of course, God, great music, great fun, great people.
And we have found our salvation. Louder now, we will praise Him. There's no...
I love Forefront because Jason gives the best spoiler alerts on Sundays. # Walking Dead Ruined.
We will let it out. We will rise as the church. We will shout aloud.
love Forefront because the people there know how to love like Jesus taught us.
I love Forefront because it's a church made up of people who are real, who love and support you, people who become your family.
There's no one like our God.
I love Forefront because I can be myself. There's no judgment and there's no hate, and everyone's just real with each other.
There's no one like our God.
I love Forefront because of Jason's beard.
We will sing, we will let it out. We will rise as a church. We will shout aloud.
I love Forefront Church because I know walking through the doors that I'm not a perfect person. I know that I do make mistakes, but after walking in the doors, I'm also constantly reminded by everyone there that I'm loved no matter what.
I wish we could have shared more of those, and we'll share it, in the coming weeks. We got hundreds of those, and I loved even first service that had it, and I heard it in this one. It was God has seen all my, and then there were all these stars. I hear that, and which I love the honesty in that. I also love Jake, the guy who's playing drums today, that it took him 20 takes to get his video. So you can ask him about that. His wife sold him out on social networking. I was like, that's funny. But here's the thing. It is not all those stories and the many stories that you guys have and that continue to happen. They are not about the name Forefront Church. They're about God. They're about what God's doing in your life, what God's doing in my life. And I'm just so thankful that we get to be a part of this. And when we ask ourselves, then how can we impact other people's lives with this message? For those of us that would say, I'm following God, I'm tracking with Him, how does that happen? And if you're not there yet, I pray that I'm so thankful you're here, that you continue to come back and be a part of this, and you'll watch as some of those stories that you saw, those will become your story of God's healing and redemption. And for those of us that would say, I want to lend a hand to people. I want to reach out and be able to pour into that, like that guy, the farmer that's sowing those seeds and pouring into people. How can I do that for others? Here's your takeaway for the week. We want to make sure that if you can leave with anything, that you leave with one thing that'll impact your Wednesday and Thursday and Friday as you're living this life. And it's this: believers build a base and branch out. If you don't remember anything else today, as someone who's following Jesus and as someone who maybe you're still trying to figure this out, how do I engage this? How to do this? That I will begin to build a base here that in my life, a base where I'm learning about Him, trusting in Him, singing praise to Him, my joys, my sorrows, and everything, and that I will branch out into other people's lives just like that farmer did. That farmer in that story and that parable, he's just like, you know what, I want to lend a hand to anybody now. Not everybody is going to be as receptive as others, but I don't care. All my hope, all my desires, that I will live a life where I'm going to keep planting seeds in people's lives. I'm going to love on people. I'm going to show them grace. Yeah, that boss, he's so irritating, man. I'm going to tell him how much I love what he's wearing or whatever. I'm going to tell, my neighbor who's driving me nuts because they never, this is not true for me, but if you have a neighbor that never mows their lawn or doesn't bring the trash can and you're like, oh, that maybe for you go, I'm just going to let them know how much I care about it. Maybe I'm going to mow their lawn. They'll be like, why'd you do that? And don't say, because you don't mow your lawn. But that everything that you do would plant seeds in people's lives. That you would say, I want my life to echo that of Jesus. It's so I want to build a base inside of my heart that is constantly being filled by gathering together with other people and studying and learning and praying. And then I'm going to take that out and share that with other people that share this hope, this amazing hope of this God that transforms people's lives, people's marriages, all the stuff that's in our lives, that He just comes in and moves all that and turns our life upside down. And we're like, man, this is so new and so fresh. I can't believe I have never experienced this before. But far too often, people begin to derail. They go, I want God, and like even in the trailer of the first gal, we're not going to get into a ton of her story, but she has a hard time, and they interviewed her for the book because she has one foot in the sex industry and one foot in what God wants her to be, and she doesn't know why the church won't just affirm that it's okay to live in this way and at the same time love God. And so she's trying to balance this frustration. The guy that was third in the video that was talking about science and everything else, many churches don't talk about science, don't engage science. They're scared of science. We're not scared. We believe that there's this beautiful marriage of science in the Bible and what takes place. And we talk about it all the time. You can look back at past series and stuff that we want to talk about that, but for him, he's like, you know what, I don't want to deal with that. They deny science and stuff, and they just want to talk about God and hope. But we embrace that. In all of these stories, there has to be a chunk where you and I take some steps, whether we are close to God or still asking questions. We have to be able to ask some questions of ourselves and say, can I track and be close to Him or take a step towards Him? And these are precepts no matter if you're following God or not. And so if you're here this morning, you're like, I'm not sure about this. I hear you talking to believers and whatever. This is for you and I in this dialogue. And the first one of those, there's going to be 3 of them. And so if you're OCD and you want to write some of these down, this is awesome. The first one is to be honest. To be honest, whether you're a believer or a non-believer, and you're just still, or you're seeking and kind of asking, that we would be honest about this journey. That there's going to be some things that we know, there's going to be some things we don't know. And the fault of the church has been like, we know it all, come over here, we'll tell you how you're wrong and how you can be good. And people are like, no, there's a lot more that I think as I read that are gray areas, and I'm not sure about this, and I want to have more of a dialogue, and you just keep telling me why it's this. And I would say that if you're a believer this morning, the church has had a bad rap, and Christians have had a bad rap, and they've earned it in just saying, I've got it all figured out. And I think we need to be honest in the fact that you don't have it all figured out. I sat with this guy that goes to Forefront here, and his mom was very ill, and she was in the hospital, and so all the family were up at the hospital, and we were sitting in the kind of just family waiting area, and as we're sitting there, and I remember it like it was yesterday because it was very tense, and I could just see, and she was on the verge of passing, and we're sitting there, and I remember thinking to myself, because a rerun of Ricky Lake Show was on the TV, and I was like, I would much rather talk about anything that they're talking about than what he's asking me now, because I wanted to give him answers, because he starts in, he's like, why, we're just shooting the breeze, and out of nowhere, it kind of turned, why is God letting this happen? Why wouldn't God just heal my mom? And we could go through, and I've heard all kinds of answers that Christians have given, and usually they're really awful ones. Things like, and we've talked about before, like, well, God needed another angel. If you ever say that, and I hear about you saying it, I will slash your tires with the love of Jesus. It's so bad. Don't say that to people. It's one of the worst, like all those kind of answers that you're going to give in that, don't do it. And like all through my mind, I'm watching my friend who's grown, who I could see like he's tearing up and he's asking these heartfelt questions, and I could have gotten into, well, here's a sermon about blah, 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 and all I was like, man, I don't know. I don't know. I wrestle with that too. Because I've had people that I've lost, family members, my wife and I, we've talked about before, we had a miscarriage, and I asked God some of those same questions with fists clenched tight. At some point, we have to be honest in this. Seeking or following Jesus. If you're seeking, maybe you need to be honest and say, maybe everything that I'm doing, I don't have all the answers, and even though I think I can walk on water and that nothing that I do stinks, like maybe, just maybe, God, the one who created me, who knows the number of hairs on your head, who like breathed life into you, maybe He knows what you need more than you know what you need. And so there's a dialogue there that needs to take place about being honest that the church usually steers away from, that I encourage. but saying, you know what, we don't have all the answers, but let's try to figure that out together. The second one, if you're taking notes here, is just being available. I hear this from people all the time. Hey, let's get together, but I know you're really busy. Yeah, everybody wears that. I'm busy. Got a big badge. I'm busy. I'm important. People love me. I got a lot going on. I'm busy. Hear people talk about this all the time. It drives me bonkers. Because, and people even call me, Pastor, I know you're really busy, whatever, which I usually correct people. I'm like, you can just call me Jason if you want. Pastor Jason. I'm like, no, I'm just Jason, I promise. And so, and they'll say, I know you're really busy. I'm like, and I stop. I'm like, actually, I try to not be busy because I don't think that's what God wants for me. I don't think that's what God wants for you. God wants us to be available for people. I had the opportunity to speak at my alma mater this past Friday to a bunch of other pastors from around the states here. And I was sitting at lunch before I had to speak with a friend of mine and his wife, and they're just sitting there talking, and he was on his phone because his bracket had busted from March Madness. And he's just on there, and she is trying to talk to him, and he is just glazed over his phone. And I watch this take place, and it's the same thing if you walk into any restaurant and you see all the family who really loves one another all on their devices. Like kids have their headphones in, one's playing Angry Birds Part 75, the two parents, one's answering email, one's on Pinterest, and they're just doing their thing, and like, oh, that's a loving family. And I'm like, oh my gosh. People want you to be available. And what I wanted to say, but I didn't, to my friend, I later texted him, I was like, I want to use you in a sermon, and so I need to ask your permission for this. I'm not going to name your name. But hey, we need to be available. People around you are dying for your attention and dying to have conversations with you about more than the weather and what's happening in basketball and who got voted off of The Voice or American Idol or whatever, or who's the last person that died in Downton Abbey. I mean, like, people really want to talk about things that matter. And so you have to be available for people. Believer or still searching is to be open and honest. Say, I want to be available to have that dialogue. I want to keep coming back because I want to hear about this. And it's this, wait a second, what you're saying actually is counterintuitive to what I've ever heard. And so I want to, wait a second, why are you saying that about the church and God and believers and all this stuff? And I would say keep coming back because we need to be available to have that dialogue. And the third thing, if you're taking notes, is we need to be a risk taker. Usually the introverts in the room start getting real anxious. They're like, I'm not taking risk. I don't want to do that. I'm actually not going to talk to anybody. And so before you get there, and I totally get it, and we talk about, I'm an introvert too. God played a nasty joke on me and said, here, I'm going to put you on a stage and talk to people every week. And then you're going to go, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. Afterwards I want you to reach under your seat and grab, you have 2 cards under there. And you're going to start looking at them, and then you're going to get real anxious if you're an introvert. And I would say take a breath. I promise you there's no special verse about you in the Bible, and we're going to get to that here. The first card that we have is this. We're going to get to the other one. So if you have this one here with the green on it, you might be like, oh, here's where the pastor tells us we need to invite people, and I'm not going to invite people. You can't tell me what to do. And I would say, you know, what I would want to say, but I'm not going to, is that's dumb thinking. But and I'm talking to, if you're a believer this morning, if you've claimed Christ, if you're following him, if the cross matters, and if Jesus matters, and if eternity matters, and all these things matter, if you can invite people to the ODU football game, or if you can watch them go play basketball at the TED, or you can go over and watch Journey strum a few chords, as amazing as their new singer is to the old singer, it pales in comparison to the story of God. And so I would just ask you, why? Why haven't you, and I can say this with confidence because I talk to people all the time. You might be like, Jason, but you're the pastor. That's what you get paid to do. You got to do that so you can get up there and tell a story about it. And I'm like, nope, if I wasn't in this role, I would still tell people about Jesus because Jesus changed my life. And I do everywhere I go. Not like in a creepy way, like, hey, have you met Jesus? Or do you know where you're going tomorrow? Like, nothing like that. But at some point I say, like, hey, like, and usually what happens is people will ask me. They'll say, hey, you act a little different. Like, that just happened, and I wouldn't have reacted that way. I would have told that person. And you're like, well, I don't think I should do that. I used to do that, but I don't do that anymore. Like, why? Well, like my life's been changed. Like what? Like, man, I just started going to church. I started learning about God, and like my life was just wrecked in a good way. And your story matters for other people. And I would say, don't be someone who invites people, be someone who brings somebody else. Say, hey, I want to lock arms with you, and I want you to come with me. I want you to be a part of this, and I want to journey in this with you together. But there's another one that's there, and you have this other card with you. This is because you guys are so awesome. That 9 a.m. didn't get this one, although after how many people were there, because it was about as full as this, I should have made a card for them, but I didn't. You guys are awesome, and this hour is amazing, but on Easter Sunday, I would love to see you at any hour but this one. You want to know why? Because you're sitting, like I'm sitting next to someone and I'm feeling really anxious right now. I feel like I'm sweating a little bit. I don't know what's going on. Like it might be a little strange to you, and that's totally fine. But here's the deal. When we were meeting at Ocean Lakes and we had 320 people, we would have like 600 people show up for Easter. Well, now we have, between all three services on Sunday mornings, about 600 people, and now I'm going like, oh my goodness. Like even at 4 services on Easter Sunday, I'm like, there's a good chance that we're going to fill this every time in the lobby. And so what I would say is, man, as you walk out, there's going to be a green table. You need to take this card, check off anything other than this service, because it's not available on the card. And I would actually tell you, why don't you come at night? Like sleep in, go have Easter brunch with your family, and come at night. One, who doesn't love to sleep in? 2, because eternity matters, because Jesus matters, because his message mattered, not Forefront Church, because God matters, I want to free up my seat so somebody else can sit here, because 11 a.m. is usually the easiest hour for people. They'll wake up, they'll kind of sleep in a little bit, wake up, hey, we should probably go to church. Hey, we saw that sign on the road. Let's go try that out. And this room's going to be full, and it won't be full with you because you're going to be at another service. You like how I did that, right? That was good. That was good. I've been practicing that one on for you guys. But I want you to be a risk taker. My daughter, we're going to kind of wrap up with this. My daughter, we were doing laundry the other day, and we have a king-size bed, which a king-size bed, I didn't realize how big, it's huge. And she gets this, like, out of the corner of my eye, I'm over, because I have the side of the bed close to the door, because my wife, if someone breaks in, wants me to die first. And so, let's be real. And so she's like, I'm going to survive. And so I'm over there, and I'm doing something out of the corner of my eye, I see this, like, flash, and my daughter jumps off the bed, and I'm like, good. So I catch her, I'm like, what is your problem? And she's like, I was like, you can't do that. Like, at least give me some warning. Like, Daddy. Like, I'm running towards you. And so I asked her, like, why did you just run? And she's like, Daddy, I knew you were going to catch me. A lot of us live in fear that, like, somehow we're going to be rejected by people when we talk to them about God and the church. But here's the thing. We have such a beautiful place that God has done here with you guys. We are the church. If someone says they don't want to go, they're not rejecting you. They're just saying they're not ready to take that step with God. But we've talked about it. 9 out of 10 people say they would come, but no one's asked them. My friend Russell, in the opening, talking about him running into the thing, well, we still keep up over the years. And we were talking the other day, just talking about the basketball day, and I was telling him, hey, I'm going to use that in a sermon. He's like, yeah. He's like, I needed a hand then. He has gained focus again in such a new way. There'll be some pictures of him up here. He created his own video production thing, and he travels all over the world. He was working with Timberland boots in the mountains somewhere overseas. That's him. He was out on a beach. I remember one time when he got there, I was like, hey, so where were you last time? He's like, Bali. I was like, oh, that must be nice. And then this is him actually with Kobe. He and Kobe are hanging out. He hung out with him for 7 straight days, 24 hours a day, to film like this little documentary with him. And I wanted to share some of these because it's very easy for us to get lost in just the falling down. But people need a hand up to be able to regain focus. And what I love about Russell is Russell doesn't brag about his life and the people he meets. He meets amazing people all the time. Just recently finished a documentary about Coach K and the amazing basketball program they have. but nobody knew. He just brought it up in conversation. He wasn't even name dropping. But when I asked him about this, he said, you know what I get to do? What's way cooler than anything else? He's like, when the cameras are off and I get to lay down the gear, he said, I get to travel the world and talk to people about Jesus. He's like, I know that, he's like, I don't know where Kobe's at with God. He's like, but we get to talk about it. He said, what are you going to do when you get back? So I'm going to go home and hang out with my wife and daughter, and we're going to go to church tomorrow. And I don't know about you, but there's somebody in your life, there's a lot of somebodies in your life that need a seed planted, that they need somebody to lend out a hand and just say, here, I want to help you up, and let's journey in this together. And my prayer is people continue to come and we fill this room, and we'll add 5, 6, 7 services. I know that my staff, when they hear that, because I'm like, we're going to add more services, they're like, oh, they freak out. I'm like, we'll preach Jesus 1,000 times on a Sunday, Saturday, whatever, if it means somebody gets to know him. But that starts with you, in the lives that you're impacting, and the people that you're meeting, and the people who are trusting you. So my hope is that the people that you meet won't be able to look at you down the road and go, I know you've been checking out that church, that God guy, whatever, but you lost me. Let's pray.